Presidency University has some big advantages. You get some very bright students.
The government is not going to act as a facilitator for acquisition of land.
Right. But that's not the issue. The issue is that land is very fragmented.
আমাদের সঙ্গে আজকে নোবেল বিজয়ী অর্থনীতিবিদ অধ্যাপক জোসেফ স্টিগলিটস আছেন। ওনার সঙ্গে আমরা একটু কথা বলার সুযোগ পেয়েছি। উনি কলকাতায় এসেছেন, ইন্ডিয়ান স্ট্যাটিস্টিক্যাল ইনস্টিটিউটে উনি বক্তৃতা দিয়েছেন এবং প্রেসিডেন্সি কলেজেও বক্তৃতা দিয়েছেন। আমরা ওনার সঙ্গে একটু ভারতীয় অর্থনীতি সম্বন্ধে ওনার কি ধারণা এই মুহূর্তে সেই বিষয়ে ওনাকে একটু প্রশ্ন করব। Professor Stiglitz, thank you for giving us the time. The sort of things we would want to know from you would be what your impressions are about the state of the Indian economy, though I know this is not a fair question to ask given that this is a very short period that you're staying here. But so I'll give you one or two leading questions maybe so that could help us a little. Now, I have heard you yesterday speaking here in the Indian Statistical Institute. I have heard you today speaking at Presidency University. And I know, and also I've read you, of course, and I know basically what your views are about what's happened to the American economy. Now, despite having heard you about that, what I've been thinking about is since the early 90s, India has been globalizing. India has been going into this, liberalization, has been following this liberalization route. And the policymakers in India seem to believe that this has yielded rich dividends measured in terms of something you don't like, I know, the GDP rate of growth. But what we see actually is that a vast amount of inequality has developed in the course, though we are one of the leading economies in terms of GDP growth in India. Now, as far as I can see, the main contributor to the growth process has been the information and technology sector, the IT sector, services basically. And not much has happened in the rest of the economy. Now, do you think that the kind of policies that the Indian policymakers are following make much sense to you?
Well, I say that's a complicated issue.
I know.
The IT sector, let me say, is a very important part of the global economy,
Sure.
and being strong in that is obviously very good, very important. But the point that you raised, that you can have growth, and yet most people could be worse off.
As a matter of fact,
is what happened in the United States, and is a worry here in India. The data aren't quite clear. One of the concerns is that there should have been more improvement in nutrition, more job creation, all these other social indicators have not improved as much as one would have hoped. So the lesson from that is that clearly more of some things are needed. The poor in India are still disproportionately concentrated in the rural sector in agriculture. And agriculture has not been growing as fast as the rest of the economy. And the growth that has occurred is not environmentally sustainable. You've been draining the groundwater. So the government has done some things. The Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme is something to try to help the rural sector. It's important that the workers who are working on this be used in a productive way. Irrigation, rural roads, to improve the livelihoods of those in the rural sector. So in my mind, one of the things I would put more emphasis on is how can we improve the productivity of the rural sector. The gap in output per acre between India and China is still huge. So there's enormous room for improvement.
Okay.
The big revolution, the Green Revolution, is almost a half century ago.
Exactly.
And it's time for another revolution.
That's exactly right.
And so there are a number of things that ought to be more of the focus.
Right.
And blind faith that markets will solve this, I think is wrong.
As a matter of fact, what's happening here is that there's clearly a lot of disguised unemployment in the rural sector. So as far as we here can see, we need some place where this excess labor can be absorbed. Now, the IT sector is not quite the place where they can be absorbed because it needs skilled labor, and these people are not skilled. So you need some kind of an absorber which can employ these people, quite apart from improving the productivity in the rural sector, because improving productivity per labor would mean you'll create more unemployed. So, which direction should we go as far as absorbing the people released from agriculture is concerned? I know what the answer should be, but I have an answer, but I want yours.
Okay. Well, I think there are several components there. One of them is one has to have almost a balanced growth of the economy. There are certain sectors that are more labor intensive.
Correct.
Tourism.
Right.
Actually, construction.
Exactly.
But actually, there are some kinds of agriculture that are very labor intensive. Mm-hmm. So you're perfectly right. Increases in productivity will, by themselves, would reduce the demand for labor.
That's right.
But at the same time, if you restructure agriculture to more labor intensive commodities, flowers, as an example, that could be exported to other markets. One puts one's mind to how can we direct the economy into more labor-intensive sectors. The second idea that I think is important is to realize that innovation in the West has been directed in the wrong direction. That innovation in the West has been focused on saving labor. You might say creating unemployment.
Exactly.
But not on saving resources.
Right.
But in the world today, and especially in the emerging markets, what you want is not to save labor, but to save on natural resources. So you have to break the old model of innovation, and that's going to take government effort to redirect
labor intensive
to create to save on resources and stop saving on labor.
Would you think that manufacture could be one avenue we could go for? Because despite all the growth we are talking about, the manufacturing sector has not really been growing that well.
There is some room for growth in manufacturing, particularly as the Indian economy grows. There's going to be more demand for manufactured goods,
right.
and there's no reason why those goods can't be produced here in India.
In India, yeah.
Over the long run, this is a sector which has had enormous productivity growth. Faster productivity growth than many other sectors, faster productivity growth than the rate of growth of demand for manufacturing. So that, in fact, manufacturing globally, the employment is going down or certainly not growing very rapidly.
Right.
India can